In the months leading up to the main counterattack, Deaf commandos and Maskarovka operatives supplied weapons and training to numerous guerrilla groups fighting across the occupied worlds, further straining the already overextended Davion forces. This effort may have slowed the Davion advance, but the ultimate outcome still appeared inevitable: a Capellan defeat. Had the October 7th attack not occurred, that likely would have remained the case. However, the bombing of Sion completely reversed the momentum of the invasion against George Hazak. Rather than further demoralizing the already battered Capellan forces, it reinvigorated them. By October 21st, Operation Thunderstrike was fully underway across all three invasion prongs. The 5th Macaron's Armored Cavalry launched an assault on Aldertain, where it engaged the 5th Crucius Lancers. After a brutal battle, the Big Mac forced the Lancers out of the system, driving them into full retreat to St. Ives. At Randar, the Capellan Hussars' Holdfast Guards aboard the newly upgraded Feng Huang-class warship Ilsa Hyung effectively destroyed the 20th Avalon Hussars and killed General Randy Hazak Bills. Ares was one of many planets the AFS failed to fully subjugate. Although the world was under complete siege, the 4th Macaron's Armored Cavalry defiantly resisted the 5th New Certus Fusiliers for months. Operation Thunderstrike ultimately brought the 4th relief when the Black Wind Lancers, led by Sang Shao Doles, broke the stalemate and annihilated the Fusiliers. During the battle, Doles personally killed George Hazak's sister-in-law, Serena Thomas Hazak. Elsewhere, Sang Shao Chongvong led Remshil's Dragoons and Warrior House Imara in an assault on Hexer, overwhelming the stationed 4th Elysian Lancers, before moving on towards Imelda. In November, the Word of Blake entered the war on the Capellan side. As AFFS forces were redirected to contain the counterattack, several worlds were left underdefended. Exploiting this vulnerability, the Word of Blake deployed the 30th Division to Kittery, where it annihilated both the 1st Kittery Borderers and the 1st Kittery Training Battalion. Once secured, the former Capellan ruling class was reinstated, and the world formally rejoined the Confederation. And by December, the Magistracy of Canopus had also joined the offensive. Lady Naomi Centrella, leading the 3rd Canopian Fusiliers, arrived on Sion with much-needed reinforcements and supplies. However, it was not all good news. On Warlock, in the St. Ives commonality, half of the St. Ives Janissaries betrayed the Confederation and joined Hazak's invasion in hopes of liberating St. Ives once more. The first Janissaries fought their traitorous counterparts for control of the planet until mid-3069, when Romans mounted Fusiliers landed. The Fusiliers encircled the 2nd Janissaries in the capital city and, over the course of 5 hours, systematically forced them back into the city center, where they were ultimately annihilated. The 15th Dracone and Warrior House Ijori were effectively destroyed during the assault on Overton. The 1st Fat Sons Lancers RCT inflicted catastrophic damage on both units, but were ultimately forced to withdraw. When reinforcements arrived, only a handful of House Ijori warriors remained.
CBS has just received confirmation from the Ministry of Information that our blessed leader Sun-Tzu lives.
During a scouring operation through the ruins of the Forbidden City, Cao Wei had the Cole and her search party combed a section of what had once been the Celestial Palace for any signs of life. During the sweep, they detected faint sounds emanating from deep within the rubble. The team immediately called for an excavation effort. Once the debris was cleared, they uncovered a hidden command bunker buried far underground. From the darkness emerged Chancellor Sun-Tzu himself, alive and in remarkably good condition, despite having been entombed without food or water for nearly 2 months. The Chancellor was swiftly evacuated and taken to a hospital. For her efforts, Cao Wei had the Cold was awarded a customized FRB-3E Firebee. Upon his recovery, the Chancellor quickly resumed his duties and met with Regent Talenzan to redress the Hazak invasion. Jean stepped down without hesitation, returning full authority to Sun Tzu. While trapped beneath the ruins, Sun Tzu had devised his own counteroffensive strategy. Upon reviewing Operation Thunderstrike, he integrated his plans into the existing framework, transforming it into Operation Celestial Vengeance. This new strategy expanded the counterattack into a full-scale invasion of the Capellan March, with the ultimate objective of striking New Syrtis and eliminating George Hazak. The counteroffensive continued with rapid success. Warrior House Lushan, reinforced by the 3rd Confederation Reserve Cavalry, liberated Homestead from the Elysian Lancers' 9th Rangers. On New Weston, the 5th Confederation Reserve Cavalry, supported by elements of the Death Commandos, destroyed the Jiefeng Legion. Fraser was among the first Davion worlds to fall under renewed Capellan control. Once a Capellan possession before its loss to the Federated Suns during the Second Secession War, the planet was retaken by the Prefectorate Guards after just 2 days of fighting against local militia forces. Amid this string of victories, Sun-Tzu Lives announced his marriage to Naomi Centrella, heiress to the magistracy of Canopus, and revealed the existence of his daughter, Elsa Centrella Lives, thereby securing the line of succession. This announcement further boosted the morale of an already galvanized population, accelerating the momentum of Operation Celestial Vengeance. Later in May, the CCAF struck the vital shipyards at Cathil. Death Commandos, supported by the 2nd McCarran's Armored Cavalry and Warrior House Dai Da Chi, launched a coordinated assault that destroyed the shipyard's core systems and defenders. During the battle, Dai Da Chi vessels deployed a nuclear strike against the stationed Federated Suns warship Simon Davion, obliterating it. The green tide advancing towards New Syrtis seemed unstoppable. However, the path forward was far from smooth. On Jaipur, the 2nd St. Ives Lancers were met by a counterattack from the 12th Vegan Rangers. The Lancers underestimated the understrength mercenary force, which had been hastily assembled. The Rangers set a well-prepared ambush for the overconfident Lancers, smashing through their ranks and killing their commanding officer, Sangshao Lucas Tolak. His death triggered a massive rout. But despite the victory, the Vegan Rangers were unable to secure the planet due to the swift arrival of the 1st St. Ives Lancers shortly afterward.
Citizens of the Confederation, it is my sad duty as your Chancellor to inform you that an injustice on a monolithic scale was perpetrated against our beloved Xi'an. This outrage you may already know, but while we originally believed the Federated Suns committed this act against us, earlier today I received undeniable proof that warships belonging to Word of Blake actually launched this barbaric attack. Using modified IFF beacons to simulate Davion identification beacons, these traitors to humanity laid waste the Forbidden City and most of the capital. Thanks to diligent efforts by the Maskirovka, our operatives uncovered the truth. Furthermore, we now know who is ultimately responsible for the attacks in and around the Lao commonality, the Word of Blake. In addition, though Hazak launched an illegal invasion against the peaceful citizens of the Confederation, he did not authorize any attack using warships against Xi'an. I recognize my government's responsibility in accusing the Federated Suns and hereby recant that claim. We have a common enemy. Instead of battling each other, the CCAF and AFFS should turn their focus toward the Word of Blake. They pose a clear and present danger to the security and stability of the Capellan Confederation and the Federated Suns. For us to continue our current actions will only sap our strength and weaken our ability to defend against those who seek to destroy our way of life. Therefore, I am offering the Duke George Hazak a cessation of all hostilities and an immediate ceasefire. Together, our respective militaries must focus on eliminating the military threat posed by the word of Blake. Thank you, and good night.
More good news reached the Capellans toward the end of 3069. Although delayed by 2 months, reports confirmed that Duke Kai Lau had been rescued by a team of death commandos. Kai wasted little time condemning his kidnapping and was expected to join the offensive as soon as he had recovered. The capture of Taigeta by the St. Ives Lancers and the 3rd Macaron's armored cavalry, New Syrtis was effectively surrounded on 3 sides. CCAF forces paused to complete final resupply operations as they awaited the order to attack. That order came on September 14th, and the invasion of New Syrtis began in full force. Multiple CCAF units descended upon the planet. The 3rd Macaron's armored cavalry landed in Sasso City, behind the already engaged 3rd Set Hussars and 4th Donegal Guards. The defending Hazak forces suffered heavy casualties. However, a Hussars aerospace lance carried out a suicide strike against the Big Mac's dropship, crippling it and leaving the attackers stranded. Those who refused to surrender were destroyed. The invasion continued for another week before the Capellans abruptly halted their advance and signaled a retreat. While the Battle of New Syrtis unfolded, covert Capellan worlds such as Tikhonov and Lao were struck by the sphere-wide HPG blackout initiated by the word of Blake. Up until this point, the Capellan Confederation had largely avoided this disruption. At first, the sudden communications failure was mistaken for a Hazak counterattack in the region. By November 5th, however, it was confirmed that the word of Blake had launched an offensive against the Capellan Confederation. The Dynasty Guards and Hell's Black Aces were stationed on planet when the Word's 21st Division made landfall. The Dynasty Guards initially held their position and observed the Blakis, who had not yet been declared hostile. Hostilities began when the Blakis attempted to advance on the capital. The Dynasty Guards and the Black Aces quickly encircled the 21st Division and forced it to withdraw. Elsewhere, on Hellerwind 5, the 6th Confederation Reserve Cavalry was engaged in an intense and costly battle against the 1st Fat Sons Armored Cavalry and local militia forces when a Blakist fleet suddenly appeared in orbit and began a devastating bombardment. Millions were killed or injured as cities and towns were systematically targeted. Before contact was lost, reports indicated that both Capellan and Hazak forces were aiding one another with casualties and salvage efforts.
Highness, they come as we were told. The mask has succeeded lately in getting timely intelligence. Indeed, Colonel. Though I must say, it will put a damper on the coming ceremonies. I know the Chancellor ordered fireworks, but of this magnitude? Yes, the celestial wisdom has allowed his unique sense of humor to arise frequently these days. I must admit, in these things he seems almost prescient. Perhaps his time in the dark has truly perfected him. Such foresight bodes well for us, I would imagine. As long as we share the same path, Colonel. Nevertheless, our Capellan friends are threatened. And what kind of betrothed would I be if I allowed my groom to stand alone against these thrice damned Blakists?
With the arrival of the new year, Chancellor Sun-Tzu Lives formally confirmed hostilities to the word of Blake and ordered the CCAF to withdraw from the Capellan March to confront this new threat core word. He also extended an offer of peace to the Federated Sons, even recanting the Confederation's claims that House Davion had been responsible for the bombing of Sion. Maskarovka investigations later revealed that the vessel responsible had in fact been a Blakist warship, disguised as a Federated Sons ship. The CCAF once again entered a period of rapid rest and refit before redeployment. Despite the ceasefire, several Davion holdouts in the St. Ives commonality refused to stand down. On worlds such as Ares, the 4th McCarran's Armored Cavalry, local Home Guard units, and the Black Wind Lancers eliminated these remaining forces, often to near total destruction. Davion troops under Chromo, Warlock, and Hutang barely managed to retreat ahead of advancing Capellan forces. As the armed forces returned, local populations organized spontaneous parades to celebrate the troops who had liberated them from Davion occupation and drive the invaders back to Nicertis. In September, on Warlock, the St. Ives Lancers were welcomed with a grand celebration in the capital city. Duke Kai Lao made a dramatic appearance piloting the infamous Yin Lo Wang, inspiring the crowd to erupt into a fervent rendition of the national anthem. However, less than a week later, just as celebrations reached their peak, disaster nearly struck again. A Blakist invasion fleet suddenly translated into orbit above Sion. Were it not for the presence of the Ilsa Hyung, Alicia Chris, and 2 Impivado-class destroyers, the day of death might have been repeated. Capellan naval forces managed to repel the invasion forces, reportedly destroying one of its cruisers. 2 Blakist dropships nonetheless managed to land, deploying the 17th and 24th Divisions, which launched a massive assault on the still rebuilding Forbidden City. The Red Lancers and Warrior House Imara held the line until the sudden arrival of the Black Wind Lancers broke the stalemate and secured the city. Less fortunate was St. Ives, where the capital, Tianjin, was devastated by a separate Blakist attack. In the months that followed, a series of events, both hopeful and tragic, unfolded. In October, while reconstruction efforts were still underway, Chancellor Sun-Tzu Lives and Naomi Centrella held their wedding on Sion, an event that lifted public morale. The following month, Tamara Quinn officially announced the dissolution of Free Capella after word of Blake assassinated Treyang Lao, bringing the organization back into the Confederation. As the CCAF and elements of the Magistracy Armed Forces prepared for a full campaign against the word of Blake, the Taurian Concordat effectively withdrew from the Trinity Alliance, choosing instead to continue its conflict with the Federated Sons. The year closed out on a somber note for the Lao family. Kai's eldest son, David Lear, was lost in transit while traveling to St. Ives to celebrate the new year with his family. David was 17.